What's the deal with Nintendo's newest IP? Who developed it? What do we make of it? And how do you even pronounce the name? There is so much to unpick still from that April Direct, but in the spirit of zigging where everybody else is zagging, I wanted to spend a bit of time digging into one of the most low-key fascinating first-party titles in the showcase. A title that I don't sense is getting the attention it possibly deserves amidst the gigaton giants that are Mario Kart, Donkey Kong, and Metroid Prime. A game that is, as far as I can glean, pronounced Drag and Drive. Not, as it's written, Drag Cross Drive, although the latter seems way cooler to me given the basketball context. At any rate, with the exception of the Switch 2 welcome game, this is the only new first-party IP of the Direct, so it's definitely worth a look. I am always a fan of new Nintendo IP, and this one has the added benefit of using the Joy-Con in really innovative ways, particularly mouse mode. The early footage confirms a suspicion I talked about in videos on mouse mode prior to the Direct, which is that mouse mode could be deployed even without an obvious flat surface. The game recommends using it on your legs. It does look really hype, plus in an era where every sport you can think of has a game simulation, this one really feels new. My only concerns at this point are that it feels rather slight in terms of content, with the initial footage showing only a racetrack as a tutorial area, and then one court and one mode, making me think this is definitely going to be on the smaller end of the gaming spectrum. We will eventually, I hope and expect, get some information on where this game originated from and who is behind it, and I'm looking forward to that. My first instinct was that this appeared to be the Switch 2's version of ARMS. ARMS was developed by Mario Kart developers EPT9 alongside Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and was clearly a passion project from that team. With great characters, brilliant music, and a really fun core mechanic, it remains dear to my heart. However, while the game did reasonably well, it never found the, pardon the pun, legs that the original IPs like Splatoon and Ring Fit managed in the same decade, and with the lack of modes, meant that its future now seems uncertain, though I have a more extensive video detailing what might happen with ARMS going forward. In the ARMS interviews accompanying the launch, it was confirmed that the developers had many ideas for original games, and while in theory anybody of Nintendo's many development teams could initiate something original, my snap reaction was that this was something new from EPT9, who, apart from their Mario Kart endeavours, have been quiet for a very long time. But, having let it sit with me for a while, I now feel differently. I actually think this may be the Switch 2's version of Snipperclips, the charming launch title for the Switch that was a partnership between British developer SFB Games and Nintendo Software Technology, America's less well-known American first-party game developer. Again, I have a full video deep diving Nintendo Software Technology, who most recently were responsible for F-Zero 99 and the Mario vs. Donkey Kong Switch edition, but who have spent a good deal of time in the Switch era supporting indie studios to make first-party titles. See also 2019's The Stretchers and 2020's Good Job as small titles which are indie in spirit and yet were published as first-party entries by Nintendo. While SFB may have been the development partners on the game, much of the level design work on Snipperclips at least seems to have come from fairly senior people at NST. Among the level designing credits are 1080 Avalanche and Ridge Racer DS director Vivek Malwani, who also recently directed Mario vs. Donkey Kong, as well as Chris Polney, who directed F-Zero 99 and had an unspecified credit on Captain Toad Treasure Tracker. That game took the egalitarian stance of crediting all the core dev staff without differentiating job roles, so it's difficult to know precisely what he did towards it. Now, to be clear, I have no firm evidence for this supposition. Nintendo has a lot of young developers, and it tends to be the younger developers who initiate these kinds of projects. Aged 37 when the game came out, ARMS producer Kosuke Yabuki was certainly on the younger end of the spectrum, at least by Nintendo standards, and he explained at the time that this game was the initiative of the younger team members. There are certainly other teams besides that have been desperate to do new things in the past as well. Next Level Games once had a pitch called Clockwork. Retro Studios have reportedly tried many original concepts, and my deep dive on EPD8 talks about times where they wanted to do original works but were pulled back into Mario's orbit. However, I think there are a few reasons that this might be an NST collaboration. Firstly, this does feel, in terms of scale, closer to something like Good Job or Snipperclips than to ARMS. It's curious in not having a release date yet, and while I assumed that it would be a physical game, I can't find any specific confirmation to that effect. It also strikes me that wheelchair basketball as a sport is far more likely to be something developed by, or at least with, an American studio. Basketball appears to be quite well liked in Japan following the success of the 1990s manga series Slam Dunk, but the sport didn't seem to get wide traction thereafter and has declined in popularity over the years. As for wheelchair basketball specifically, its history is linked significantly to veterans, and while Japan did send troops to Iraq in 2003, the number of Japanese veterans is likely to be significantly less than the US, with its higher military presence and flat out larger population. Also, NST often works with international developers, such as Sweden's The Stretchers team and the team behind Good Job, who are based in the Netherlands. This therefore covers a much wider field of potential wheelchair basketball players, and so if the idea for the theme preceded the play mechanic, a developer partner with NST, or indeed another Nintendo stateside developer, seems plausible. And this, I guess, is what is curious to me. Was this game initiated by Nintendo as a demo of its dual mouse control scheme, or as a great pitch from an external team? It seems from Snipperclips that SFB's Adam and Tom Vian pitched the game to Nintendo and Nintendo saw the appeal. It feels plausible that if someone pitched a wheelchair basketball concept, somebody there thought, wow, that could work really well with the dual mouse controllers. Adam Vian recalls of Snipperclips' development that Nintendo brought their own exacting standards to bear onto their product, telling The Verge, raising it up from a game like the ones we were making on our own to a Nintendo product. Nintendo really pushed for that and it worked. They really demanded excellence throughout the whole game. I have to say, I love the idea of Nintendo really partnering with these indie devs, and it doesn't seem to happen too often. This feels like one of those cases where a great pitch could have met Nintendo at just the right moment. Of course, if this is true, it suggests that firstly, Nintendo did not have its own dual mouse game planned, or at least that any dual mouse games they did plan were not going to be put out for a while yet. I recently deep dived the Switch 2 developer interviews, and it seems that although the hardware team had anticipated the possibility of dual mouse controls for some time, the creative groups hadn't until some stage during Switch 2's development. It would also mean that Nintendo's other internal teams remained freed up. Whether for ARMS 2 or for something new or just to do more work on the core titles remains to be seen. While I'm not sure quite how quickly I'll be getting into Dragon Drive, and it will depend very much on the price and the reviews as to how quickly and if I pick it up, I really would like to experience it, as it looks like an extremely cool and original experience. For more on Nintendo software technology, or for my analysis of the potential of ARMS returning, please do check out the videos on screen right now. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.